Week 7 is complete of the high school football season. I'm Perry Mattern alongside Jake Adams here to recap it all for you. And let's get to these games. There was plenty of good ones, a couple of surprising ones as well. Let's start out in Carlisle. Not surprised that Central Dauphin beat Carlisle, but surprised by the wide margin.
Yeah, Carlisle gave up season high 396 yards on the ground, 241 they gave up against State College a couple weeks ago. Just shows you how close it was. They were allowing 166 a game going in. Now it's up to almost 200 a game. That's how bad that game kind of got out of hand.
Cumberland Valley and Mifflin County, the Eagles did not have much of a problem. 4 more touchdowns for Tim Spinelli.
Yeah, I mean, what else can we say about that running game? Again, it's the same thing, 4 yards in a cloud of dust. This time, season high 43 carries, 259 yards that team had. Finally starting to get some momentum, it looks like. Granted, Mifflin County, not that great of a team.
Right, maybe the worst in the Mid-Penn Commonwealth, but Cumberland Valley looking good over their last 2 weeks. Lower Dauphin at Mechanicsburg, we talked about before in our preview of Week 7 that Mechanicsburg really needed an upset in this game, and they don't get it. They were there at halftime, the second half got away.
They got a cleaner game from Schubert there. No picks this time, unlike 4 last week, but he only went 10 for 20 with 108 yards and a TD. That's not what that offense needs.
Steel High and West Perry, the Mustangs at home, still cannot get that elusive first W. Steel High wins big.
Yeah, good news from them though. Chris Lehman, 65% completion that night. Is a season high for him, 13 for 20. He really hadn't broken 50 much of the year, so that's good news from that passing game.
Paul Myra at Camp Hill had all the fireworks that you could want. A new stadium, homecoming, plenty of points, and this was really, aside from all of that outside stuff, the stadium and homecoming, this was a big win for their season.
Yeah, we were wondering if Camp Hill had what it took in this division, and this is a nice big win for them. 5 TDs from Schuster there passing, near flawless night, 12 of 13. Bill Williams was scoring from the other end of the field routinely. The game got out of hand quickly, especially watching it on Twitter from Shippensburg. That was a fun game to watch.
Let's get to 3 games here that really cost me my shirt this week. And these next 3 games I all got wrong, and you got 2 of these 3 right. Trinity at Middletown. The Shamrocks just have been a shell of themselves on the road.
Yeah, I don't really know what's going on there. Miller was great on the day, 8 carries, 138 yards, but they didn't seem to stick with him enough. It got out of hand early. They were up a minute 20 in, 8-0, and after that they never got close again.
Yeah, Middletown defense making a couple of big plays in that game. The big shocker of Friday night, Waynesboro goes to East Pennsboro and hands the Panthers their first loss. Probably, and I think I wrote about this in the notebook, the biggest surprise of the year so far.
Yeah, because Waynesboro was very up and down all season. Connor Federhoff very much can throw his team into the win column any given week, and that's exactly what he did. 12 of 25 only, but 266 yards, 2 TDs, and East Penn got 2 interceptions off him, but couldn't capitalize on it.
Yeah, East Penn down 20 at the half, got it to a 7-point game, and then the fourth quarter, 3 touchdowns for Waynesboro. Let's go to Redland and Big Spring. Actually, I didn't get this one wrong. I had another one in there. But Redland and Big Spring, we both had Redland, and the Patriots handled their business.
Garrett Scott, their quarterback, 4th straight game now with 60-plus yards on the ground. Good sign from him. He seems to really start. That's something they've tried to really work on. Redland as a team, 9.2 yards per carry, which isn't all that surprising considering how much bigger and better that team is.
Right. East Juniata at Susquehanna, and we were glad we didn't have to pick this game, and it turned out to be that kind of game. 15-14 game, and East Juniata with the 2-point conversion late to win the game.
Yeah, we'll spend a couple extra seconds on this one. Chris Schulgen, their East Juniata's quarterback, 7 for 12, 76 yards passing, a TD through the air, 20 for 95 yards rushing, a TD there, and the 2-point conversion at the end of the game that ended up winning the game for them.
Right, with 1:40 left in that game. And you have to feel for Susquehanna because they've been close, a couple of them this year. But
225 yards allowed they gave up, and their season low, and they still couldn't come out with it.
And still 0-7, unfortunately for them. Now on to our 3 key games from Friday night, the best games, starting in Shippensburg, where you were, Northern and Shippensburg, and a big win for the Greyhounds, 10-7.
One thing that caught my eye there, they're 2-0 now in games in which both teams combined for less than 400 yards of offense. So it seems that's their magic number there.
They like the grind-it-out type of game, and they got that last week against Waynesboro as well.
If they have to win based on field position, this is the team that can do it because they've got a punter in Desmond Cordero who can put teams in bad positions. He was at right around 40 yards per punt Friday night, and this team just they're getting something there a little bit. We were talking about Zion Ware earlier. He didn't have the greatest game, 77 yards and a TD. But that's because Northern defense is pretty good. Both those teams didn't allow anything on the ground all night, and Shippensburg was the one who just capitalized on field position.
Jake was 9-2 on the night on Friday. I was 7-4, and that was one of the games that we disagreed on. And you got that also, Trinity and Middletown as well. Boiling Springs and Milton Hershey, we both got this one wrong, and we picked the Spartans. Didn't have enough faith in the Bubblers, and it seems like each time we don't have faith in Nate Fryer's squad, they come through. That was a big win on the road.
And he's gonna like that. As long as we keep picking against him, he'll be happy. I think it was tied 27-27 with just 6 seconds in the fourth quarter, and then the Bubblers put up 14 straight points. Dalton Showaker, it's his second game with 150 yards through the air, and they're 2-0 in those games. It's also the only 2 games that he's ever broke the century mark through the air too. And when he does that, this team has scored 42 and 41 points. The other game was against Trinity in a blowout win. So they're not going to be a passing team like Carlisle, but maybe Fryer's starting to see something here where Showaker maybe can carry the load a little bit more than this wing tee was maybe built for.
I have to agree. It seems to be that this is progressing rather quickly into a pretty balanced offense. All right, our final game, Cedar Cliff at Bishop McDevitt. What a shootout it was. The game started out 14-0 McDevitt. Friday night, lights go out. They resume at 3:30 on Saturday afternoon. And then Cedar Cliff made it a game.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, neither one of us really got a chance to see where it got fun. It looked like for a while the Colts were just going to get blown out, and then it wasn't going to be the game that everyone was hoping this was hyped up to be. Cedar Cliff, though, got torched, 615 yards on the ground. Overall, to McDevitt, I mean, you couldn't see that coming.
Maybe not to that extent, but if you would have told me that Andre Robinson was going to be his 100% self like he was, then I start to believe that a little bit. Yeah, you're right. I mean, maybe not to the 615 yards extent, but still, you expected a little bit better from the Cedar Cliff defense. But I'd still say hats off to Colin Gillen's squad.
Yeah.
They made this a game. They were down 14-0 when the game resumed, and on one of the first plays, they threw an interception.
Yeah.
But they got it back, and they made it a game, and this was a game going into the fourth quarter before McDevitt pulled away.
And Grant Brenneman, too. I mean, we're talking about just a sophomore year, and we've had a lot of praise for him all year. He finally had one of those like sophomore games against an elite defense. 5 TDs but 3 interceptions, but you can't really be upset about that production.
And especially when he threw for 364 yards too. And McDevitt completely took away Jaden Demi, which was the obvious game plan. As you've been seeing over the last couple of weeks, when Demi gets loose, Cedar Cliff gets loose, and they did, and Brenneman kept them in the game.
You gotta like that he's got enough faith from his coaches and from his teammates that he is trusted enough to throw for it. Because a lot of kids at this age against a team like that might throw for the 3 interceptions and maybe a touchdown. And here this kid keeps swinging away basically and throwing for what he can, and it kept him in it.
Right, and eventually the Crusaders were just able to wear them down. All right, our 3 Sentinel Stars of the week, and let's start at that Camp Hill game. We couldn't choose between the two, so we put both of them in.
Bill Williams, running back, I mean, surprise, surprise. TDs of 95 yards on a kickoff return, 77 yards on a pass, 71 yards on another pass. He had a career high, or season high 5 catches, 225 yards. All of them coming from Schuster, who again we mentioned 12 of 13, 326 yards, 5 TDs. I think they scored another touchdown.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive. 2 of those touchdowns went to Hope, 3 to Williams, and Williams also eclipsed 100 yards on the ground as well on just 8 carries.
And that's not even a story.
Unbelievable game for Bill Williams. That's why he has to be in there. Let's move on to the big win for the Bubblers. So we got to find somebody, and of course, as it has been usually, John Vaughn.
And this doesn't stack up to Bill Williams' game, but that's an unfair comparison. 31 carries, 131 yards, steady as he goes kind of runner. 3 TDs on the day. He's now getting up there in the high teens. He's slowly catching up to the Demis and the Bill Williamses of this area. And he had 3 catches for 23 yards too.
He's a guy that they rely on a lot, and probably had a nice little ice bath on Saturday.
They missed him when he was gone earlier this season.
No doubt about it. All right, our final one was from your game, and we were struggling to find an offensive star, so we went defense in that defensive struggle, the 10-7 win for Shippensburg.
Yeah, and we don't really get a chance to talk about defensive guys, but Ryan Ingram, a young player out there for the Greyhounds, 2 fumble recoveries. One of them was kind of a gift that Northern botched a handoff, and he fell right on it. But he played a game. There was a couple hits out there where you're sitting in the press box, you feel the pain that he inflicted. Yeah. If it wasn't for his performance in that linebacking core as a whole, Northern might have won that game running away with it.
It was a very good game, and now with the East Pennsboro loss, everybody is back in it in the Mid-Penn.
And they didn't see that one coming either.
No doubt about it. The Colonial and the Capital, and the Keystone for that matter, all very, very good races. We will talk more about Week 8 on Thursday when we have our preview for Jake Adams. I'm Perry Mattern. We'll talk to you then.